Today, I'm going to be talking to you about ageism and Kotter's eight-step process of leading change. The BPO is primarily a local government agency in a county here in the Bronx. It is the leading governmental organization in the borough, and serves 104 million residents. It is comprised of 15 different departments, excluding the leadership C-suite. It is very diverse in age, background, ethnicity, race, and all the other primary diverse dimensions. The purpose of this study is to learn more about the contributions and challenges of age diversity and ageism in the organization and the impact of intergenerational employee relationships that exist there. What do I mean by that? Well, first let's take a look and learn about the need of this project and the background. Ageism, as we know, is a form of discrimination that negatively treats people based on their age. It is um, it usually tends to affect people that are older employees. But the truth of the matter is that it also has a drastic impact on young employees that are the opposite end of the spectrum. There are there is legislation that was passed that protects employees that are 40 years and older, but no such protection exists for younger employees. At the BPO, ageism do exist. It's not drastic in the form of, let's say, hard discrimination where people are terminated. It's more sort of a soft discriminatory stereotyping practices made of jokes and derogatory, sometimes derogatory soft remarks in the sense that young employees would talk about their older counterparts, and the older ones who've been there much, much longer at times do not appreciate the contributions of the younger ones. So what impact does this have? It causes divisiveness. It creates an atmosphere of us against them, toxicity. And the other organization that does not exist in the BPO turnover. But there is a reluctance at times between staff that have been there in a place for a longer period of time and much older to interact and work with their younger counterparts. So to look at this change, I decided to take a look at Kotter's eight-step process and its implementation, or how it can be used to deal with this dynamic at the BPO. As Kotter, as we know, um, is a leading expert when it comes to leadership and change. He's co-founded the Kotter International, a leadership organization that helps global 500 company leaders developing their skills and implementation of changes in a very rapidly complex and changing world. Kotter's eight-step process, it's divided into three phases. Phase one consists of changing environmental climate and having an understanding of what hardships and opportunity that may exist in an organization. Phase two is engagement, enabling and buy-in from employees to effectuate these changes. And phase three is the implementation and sustaining the change. So How do we create change? First, there must be a sense of urgency. This agency must identify threats and opportunities. So, in the case of the BPO, um, the opportunity already exists for the need of change. And the threats is the possibility of us against them, young against old, and creating a negative environment where people do not see eye to eye and creating a toxic environment. Right. The opportunities may be how best can we maximize the strength of the organization so that both young and old can contribute effectively, holistically, to maximize impact to the people that the organization serves, the 1.4 million residents that's in the county. So, how do we go about this? There must be an atmosphere of transparency, um, and find so that way they can possible solutions can be found to this problem. All stakeholders, both internally, externally, leadership, top to bottom, vertically, horizontally, must have and be willing to participate in this process and to be fully engaged. As we all know, that change is will and is impossible without leadership's buy-in. So, to according to Kotter, to effectuate this change, to have we need at least 75% of managers to buy in and support any type of change process. How do we engage? Well, there must be a guiding coalition or a committee of people who are invested and who want to lead, who want to be the agents of change, or who want to be in the forefront to be able to start the process. This guiding coalition or this committee must be empowered by leadership. And they also must be comprised of people who bring the relevant skills and qualifications to the table, who have the reputation to be able to engage others, to be inclusive, and be able to connect and bring resources so this change can go forward, can move forward. The Constitution or the number of people who are going to partake in the initial committee or the guiding committee varies depending on will vary depending on the size of the organization. However, they must have a clear understanding and they also must know the purpose of the journey that they are embarking on and what they're planning to achieve. They must they must create clear roles and responsibilities so that way there won't be any difficulties or any obstacles amongst themselves. So by having a clear having clear guidelines and marching orders, they will be able to work within those parameters to be able to move toward those changes. Furthermore, no change can be effective without open lines of communication. Communication is very key of how this change process will be shared with all the stakeholders. Finally, there must be very clear and distinct avenues for decision making, how to measure the success of the change, how to track it, and conflict resolutions. So, how do we intend to achieve this process? Well, according to Kotter, we must understand the need and the change climate. There must be clear strategies and a vision that must be developed to move the process forward. This vision and the purpose should be very clear, and everyone should understand where and how it's going to impact the future of the organization. It should be appetizing, in other words, appealing to all the stakeholders, and should be promoted as such. And within that context, strategies should be developed to set a clear vision. And this vision should be able to be communicated by all stakeholders clearly, effectively, in a very short period of time. In that way, to buy, it should be exciting and where it can be communicated clearly, succinctly, and uh, inspire buy-in. Engagement also means creating a clear and open line of communication. So all stakeholders in this change process, from top to bottom, leaders, internal, externally, should be able to live, breathe, taste, in other words, live this change process. It should be celebrated and communicated very clearly. In other words, branding here is key. It should be branded and using all mediums, whether it's presentations by those who are the architects of this change process, or whether it's one-on-one conversation at a cubicle, whether it's having a lunch break and sharing what the possibilities are, answering questions. It should be communicated so everyone can understand, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's sitting down and having just a regular conversation and connecting it to how it's going to impact everybody's day-to-day work. These are a type of conversation that should be engaged in and branded. And branding, as we know, comes in many different ways. Branding makes you connect uh, to a product. So in this case, it should be branded so staff, employees, and all stakeholders can connect to the change. And it's also imperative um, to be able to remove barriers to the steps. This may be personnel, this may be old and outdated existing mentality and structures. Um, they should be innovation. Innovation should also be part of this new process. Structures and systems must be implemented that's going to support the new process and the old ones uh, eliminated. And within this context as well, the people who support the process should be incentivized, right? We all know that part of organizational change and part of having a healthy organization is to be able to reward people, is able to incentivize people. So in this case, those who are at the forefront of the change should be rewarded. But reward is not sufficient in and out by itself. There must be trainings, there must be coaching, there must be mentoring, uh, up and down the organizational ladder. So that's going to breed inclusivity into the process itself. So how do we engage? How do we to continuously engage? People always want to be validated. So in any change process, according to Kotter, which I am in agreement with, the more people are validated, the more people are put on a pedestal, uh, the more uh, the more inclusive or the more they feel valued. So in this change part process, every short term matters. No matter how minute, it must be openly, visibly um, celebrated. This celebration will help create buy-in into the change process at the BPO and also boost morale and promote support for the process. You know, these people or the staff or the employees that have come out of their way to be part of the process, who believe in it, who who are bridging the gap, the intergenerational gap, and coming together to be examples of this change, to be visible example of this change, should be celebrated. These short-term wins, each action, each word in support, right? Each metric um, should be celebrated so that way those who are on the fence can see, and those who are the supporters can continue to be motivated to promote the change. So it is very, very important that this process leads and continue to consolidate the implementation process to be able to produce tangible change, right? No change process, no organizational change is 100%. In every organization, in every change process, we have the resistors, the naysayers, the fence sitters, whatever have you. Those people who put barriers, right? Those immovable mountains in your path, right? So, how do we deal with that, right? Unfortunately, some of those people have to be moved out of the way. Um, there might be some restructuring within the organization that may lessen their influence, but they do have some resistors who bring a lot of value to to the table. So there must be innovative ways of engagement to deal with such people, right? But also, there are ways that we have to bring new life, new ideas, more open mindedness to the organization by hiring new staff. And part of the orientation process and part of their the trainings that these new staff will receive have to do with the actual changes that's taking place within the BPO that supports the change process, right? So as they come in, they're coming into a new culture that's been promoted within the organization, and that is to bridge the gap between the intergenerational wealth that the organization employs, but not maximizing. The key here is to how best can we go about having that inclusivity to harness the power of a architect who has been at the organization for 40 years and a young staff that's coming in who's willing and eager to learn from that uh, employee that has been there. How best can they merge and teach each other, and so that way they can be a rich exchange between the two. So these are the goals that we have to that the opportunities that must be cultivated. And the way we can go about this is being steadfast and staying the course with the changes, uh, employing everyone's voice, soliciting feedback, um, identifying any type of cracks and weaknesses and fixing it. And the only way that can be fixed is to be as inclusive as possible. So change doesn't happen overnight. The institution or the implementation of changes comes with time. Oftentimes we see that people embark or organization embark or leaders embark on an ambitious change processes. Unfortunately, it's very short lived because it may not have been as inclusive as possible. It was not branded correctly. It's top heavy um, and imposed on the staff. So these are challenges. But when it's done correctly, people must also be willing to invest in the process and stay the course. It change comes at different speed for different people. Buying comes at different times. So it's a process that has to be continuously promoted, and the consistency must be there, albeit that the process and the people, the staff and the leaders and all the stakeholders should not and cannot be afraid to be able to make adjustments for maximum impact. So it's an inclusive process. The only way to maximize the richness and the diversity of an organization is to be as inclusive and as equitable as possible. And Kotter's change, um, 8 steps of organizational change highlights this. Um, it's not a linear process. It's a reciprocal back and forth detouring process, but it can actually achieve the goals of bridging the gap between old and new employees. So to cultivate the richness that they have to offer. Organizational change requires time, patience, and ongoing work. The change process, Kotter's 8 step change process, is a very valuable model, albeit that there are other models that could have been, and that's relevant and it's employable to um, to to tackling the ageism issue at the BPO. But in my estimation, this is a this is a change process along with employing the nudge theory that which is an inclusive theory that engages employee to be part of the process, to take ownership of the process without any adverse and negative consequences. In other words, when you feel valued, when you are included, and you are given the arena and the environment to be able to effectuate change, then it's most likely that you'll wholeheartedly champion that issue, and that is the case in this process. So the only way the murmuring and the we against them, or these old folks, these young kids, that type of narrative and soft toxicity will stop, is to be able to be a part of the process, be a part of changing the narrative, be a part of seizing the opportunity to eliminate those threats that will fester if nothing is done about this issue at the BPO. And the key here are the employees, but also leadership buy-in to be able to provide them with the arena and the relevant tools and the trust to be able to move the process forward. Thank you.